just going to go over some of the things about tables that we spoke about in our lecture, and hopefully just give you a bit more clarity and a bit more information. And I've got a slightly unexpected source for some notes. This is from, let's take a look at the website itself. So this is from pdtutorial.com, which is an amazing resource. And it's from chapter 3.4. The unexpected part about this is that all the great stuff is in the chapter called sampling, because the way we store our sequences will be very similar to the way that you'll handle audio. But that might not be what you want to get into just yet. You might just want to have a row of pitches and start working with that before you get deep into granular synthesis. We can talk about that at a future date. So the bit that you need to look at is 3.4.1.1.2. It's just a little bit down here called buffers. And this will give you the lowdown on how arrays work. It's another name for a table. And it'll give you a few different ways of manipulating these. So the examples get quite complex quite quickly, but then they have some clear instructions around here that you might find was missing from the help file and was missing from what we were talking about in the lecture earlier on. So I recommend going to 3.4, scrolling down, and maybe just skipping through, looking at this stuff here, trying out some of these things. And you could also come back here to look for a bit more written advice if what I'm doing in this tutorial doesn't make as much sense as it should. So let's go back to Pure Data. Oh, I'm going to have to load it up. And the first thing I'm going to do is make a new patch and save as, because it has a habit of crashing when we save as. So I'll save this as array exploration. Seems to be fine. Okay, good. And we can get into putting in an array. So the first thing I'll do is literally do that, go to put array. And this brings up an option window. It's actually the properties, but it's only some of the properties. So we'll call it sequence. The size, we don't want 100 notes in our sequence, you might, but just to keep things nice and simple, I'm going to put 8 notes in. So that's the size, that's the x-axis of our graph. Yes, we definitely want to save the contents in our patch. So that means if we close it and open again, it will still be there. And all these other options look good, so draw as points. You can explore these in your own time. Okay, so now we have something called sequence. And we can draw in and outside the graph. But we might want a bit more control over that. So I'm going to right click and go to properties. And behind this array properties window that very helpfully appeared when we made it, we actually have a second window. And this is where we can set a couple more things up. So the X range is from 0 to 8, that's fine. Or is it? Does that mean we've got 8 or 9? Let's take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. No, that's good. And then the Y range actually goes backwards. So it has the first number, the highest number is the first number, and then the lowest number, here is -1, is the second number. So what I'd like to do here is set it to a range that makes sense to us, and let's say we've got 12 notes in an octave, so we're going to have the range going from 12, and let's say it's going to go to 0. And then we can click OK. we'll need to click OK on this one as well. Now when I come out of edit mode, I can still drag things about in the in between the notes and outside the graph, but I know when I come to actually programming it, it's going to make a bit more sense. So I program it, or I put the information in by going to Properties, and I can open List View, and here, yeah, I've got things kind of falling in between these notes. So I'll just set something up as 2, 3, 5, 6. These are kind of intervals of the scale. 9, 12, and then all the way back down to 1, and maybe, I don't know, 4. Okay, so I've got a nice random-ish melody here, and I know that those are going to be right on the notes of the equal tempered scale, because I'm going to use MTOF. So to read these notes, I can't plug something into the sequence object, or the array object as it's kind of known as an object in itself, but I can use something called tab read. Now tab read needs the name of the sequence next to it, which is going to be sequence. Let's zoom in a bit because I'm going to get into some patching now, so I can move these around, just get them in the same part of the window. And then I'll put a number box above tab read and a number box below tab read. So tab read I just made with command 1. And now if I choose 1, I'm going to have 3. 2 will give me 5. And then it should be a big leap. I'm not sure. What happens if I go back to 0? Okay, so we're actually counting from 0. So it's going to be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 is bringing us up to 9, and then it's going to be another fairly big leap up to, I think it was 12. Yep. And then that looks like it's probably 1 there. And 7 is our last note, which is on 4 there. So how do we convert this into something that we can hear? Well, I said we would use the MTOF object, and after MTOF, let's just put our usual sine wave. So OSC, and then multiply it by 0.2, and then DAC. Can drag that into the right hand speaker as well. So I'll turn the sound on. Usually a good idea to keep your sound down low when you're turning it on for the first time. And let's listen to this sequence. So 1, 2, 3, 4. What's going on here? Let's go to audio settings, make sure it's going to the built-in output. Yep. We're playing some very, very low frequencies. So what I forgot to do was, in between my MTOF and my OSC, my oscillator, was actually boost it. Say that, let's put it before here. So before the MTOF, I'm going to put plus 60. And I might just put a number box in between those. Oh, it's this. It's this thing. You need to make sure you don't select everything when you're plugging these in. Right, there we go. Okay, so now that's more like it. Oh, so we're counting from 0. that's worked out quite nicely. We've got a nice sequence, and we might want to play that in order. So I'll just pause for a brief moment. You can pause the video here and just maybe follow those steps so that you've got this nice little unit to play with. And now we want something that's going to count through this sequence. So I had a metro object, and let's say that metro is going to be going at a rate of half a second. I'm going to make a... actually, I'm going to make one of these objects. So it's going to be a message with 1. So that's command 2, or put message from the put menu. And then I'm going to add a number to that. And that number is going to be whatever the last number was. So we're coming from the bottom of this up to the right hand side of that plus object. And then we have an object called modulo, which is like a percentage. And we're going to use modulo 8 because that's the length of our sequence. So now, even though this number is going to be increasing ad infinitum, the modulo is going to keep it within the range of 0 to 7, so 8 notes. There's a slightly different angle on that. So it's coming up from the plus into the number box, which is then going back so that 1 is added to whatever that number is, and then through here it's going to be filtered so that it's within the range of 0 to 7, which is exactly what we want here. Finally, we just want a way to start and stop this, so a toggle box, and we'll be ready to hear our sequence. Now I could drag things around here if I'm not really bothered about fitting in between or fitting into equal temperament. But a nice way of editing that would be to go into Properties, and opening the list view. So we could put a new sequence in like 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. I'm just making these up, 4, and 9, and then let's go back to 4. Well, let's make it 4.5 just because. And then we can close it. Hit OK. And let's listen to that. So that's our basic way of getting a sequence into PD and playing around with it. Of course, we don't need just a straight line with our numbers. We could do all sorts of things to access this in different ways, but that's kind of going to be up to you. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks I'll be able to put a couple more videos up to show you different ways of manipulating these numbers, but for the time being, have fun with it. So coming back, okay, so just as a little add-on, I was reading through the notes on this website, and I noticed that there's some information to set your values in your array, so to set your sequence using a message box. And the way you do it is slightly counterintuitive, because it says you can enter values like this. The first number determines which storage place to start with, and all the other values are for the positions immediately after that. So this kind of messed me up when I was playing just now, and I thought it'd be worth going through this step by step. So I'll put in a message, and it's a normal message box, but it starts off with a colon, a semicolon, and we need to type in the name of our sequence. So it might be array 1 or whatever you've called this. And then we should put in 0. So 0 means that it's going to start from the first place, and then we can type in our sequence. So let's say 2, 3, 4, 1, and then a really distinctive 12, 11, 10, 9. So we'll see something descending at the end of that, and we'll know that it's gone in. Okay, now back out of edit mode, and I click on this, and here we have 2, 3, 4, 1, and then the very distinctive 12, 11, 10, 9. Perfect. So it's this thing here. Your sequence should start with 0. Otherwise, it starts getting messy. So my first instinct was to start my sequence, and I missed that out, and I couldn't understand why it wasn't doing the first place. Just to show you that in action, I could do another one that says sequence, and I don't know, let's say I want to start at position 4, and then I'll say 1, 2, 3, 4 after that. So my understanding is, if that's 0, that's 1, that's 2, and that's 3, so it will replace this descending bit here with something ascending down here. Great. 1, 2, 3, 4. So our original sequence, and hopefully this gives you an idea of how you could start messing around with different types of sequences. These can, of course, be automated. So I could say Metro 1000 every second, choose a random 1. So that's going to be 1 or 2, or rather it's going to be 0 or 1. And I could say select 0, 1, and put in 2 bangs so that we can see that these are going through. I'll put in a toggle, and then to trigger these 2 sequences automatically, I'll put them in here. Now note that these don't have to be connected into the sequence object. They're just freestanding. They send the messages into it. So now it's changing the sequence randomly, and we can hear that in action. Okay, so that's good. I could work out a way to link these things together, but I quite like them out of time. And yeah, let's say I want a third sequence, so I'll say select 0, 1, 2, and up here I'll put this up to the random 3. And then I can make a bang. I'm kind of tight for space, but let's say sequence. Starting, let's call it from position 0 again, and then I'll change it quite dramatically, so I'll say 3, 3, 3, maybe 3.5, 8, 7.5, and 3 again. Yeah, so that's something quite different. And then of course this will give us quite a different sequence, depending on what the last one was. Okay, so let's hear that. Okay, so we've just made some different sequences using this message object, a simple semicolon, and then the name of our sequence, and a list of numbers, making sure that we start at the point that we want, so that would be 0 in this case, or if we wanted to start halfway through, we could set it to 4, and we could do all sorts of stuff with it, just replacing tiny fragments of this.